Saturday. This Saturday coming, the 21st. You'll have to get up early. Starts at 7:30 in the morning, Colin. It runs an hour before the 90 miles an hour. So that's this Saturday, Colin, starting at 7:30. Ian being the master of ceremony. Look forward to hearing you then. And, well, Ray, as far as I'm concerned, everybody said the audio is perfect, but it's not up to your usual standard. If you're still listening, I was picking up a slight raggedness. I'm being hypercritical, but nobody else is suffering from that today. So it's strange that your station is. So you might just need to check that out. But that's just me talking from my equipment. Anyway, I'll make this final, guys. Have a good day, and I'll catch you on the air tomorrow. Round to you, Colin. G3TSK, M1PBC.
Roger, Paul. M1PBC, G3TSK. Well, thank you for... I can manage 7:30 when it's necessary. I mean necessary with a big N. With a big November, necessary. I should be there. Simply say to Sheila, Sheila, bring us a cup of tea a bit earlier, pet. Oh, dear me, how. Well, you got a laugh, haven't you? So I should be there. And I feel quite comfortable. So thank you for that, Paul, and thank you for that, Trappy, if you can still hear me, and for you in there. That's brilliant. And one thing went through my mind there when Keith was on there about capacitors. I have two Heathkit C33Us. They're very versatile resistor capacitor bridge, and I treasure them. And you're able, with that type of instrument, to measure the Q to a reasonable extent and to get a good idea of the Q of the capacitor. Simply because a capacitor, oh, that's here I go again, sorry about that. Simply because a capacitor reads a certain value, it doesn't say that it's acting as a good capacitor. It needs a Q. And on several occasions when I've been restoring equipment, I've taken out a capacitor, which seems to have the capacitor all right. It ain't leaking. But I've checked on the Q and I found that the meter that I use or whatever doesn't come down to the zero, indicating that there's a lot of resistive loss in there. And on several occasions, not many mind, 2 or 3, I've replaced the capacitor with the same value and cured the problem. So the Q of the capacitor is very important. Normally, a capacitor is a very, very efficient component. In fact, I rate it as the most efficient component in the electronics industry. Capacitor. And so simple, but very effective. So there you go. So I'm sorry to go on about that. Well, I'm not sorry to go on about that. It just crossed my mind. So there we go. Hula hoop we're talking about. Guinness, I used to drink quite a bit of stout when I was a young lad. In fact, I remember drinking 8 pints of it once down at Middleton Teesdale, and then getting on the back of a motorbike. My mate drove us home. But that was in my mad days. I don't want to go back to those days. 8 pints of stout. I don't know how I managed to get downers, but there you go. I couldn't do it now. I remember that one because it was a one-off. A one-off. And Trevor, 4 and 5 there still. Aircraft articles. Look forward to the article. Isolation transformer. One of the lights that I have in the shack here has just failed. It's one of these long-lived lights, 20 watts, supposed to last forever just about. Well, it's failed, and it's failed second time in the same position over a 6-year period. And when a light's supposed to last forever and it fails after 6 years, I think I'm being shortchanged. But there you are, that's just me. I'm going to say bye-bye now and pass it over to you there, Martin. As I say, my DX40 seems to be all right there now. Maybe meet you on 5 megs one of these mornings or whatever. A G3YGO from Golf 3 Tango Sierra Kilowatt. Wishing you all a very good morning and have a nice day from me. Bye-bye.
G3TSK, G3YJO, yep. Well, very nice signal still. Colin, all copied, and the DX40 now sounding really great. So you've done a good job on that, because you know, compared to what it was when it first came on, it's now sounding as good as the 19 set. So a really good achievement. And okay about your misspent youth. Trouble is, well, I'm a relatively small chap, so there's no room for 8 pints in one go. I think it would sort of come out sprouting out of my ears, or thereabouts. All other attributes of the stuff apart. Anyway, right. Well, glad to hear that there was nothing serious, Ian. Just the fuse. I must admit, 5 amps does sound rather. Was it 5 or 3? I think I can't remember. Anyway, whatever it was, sounded rather thin for what I would imagine you're running anyway. Paul's comments probably appropriate there. Keith, very interesting, because I don't know whether you've got a different circuit diagram to me or what, because with the greatest respect, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. Firstly, yes, there is a switch, S2A, which is the narrow wide switch, and at least on the diagrams that I have access to, what they do is switch between a common straps and then decouple the bottom of the IF tuning system to a separate one to change it. And I think when it's strapped across, it's in wide mode, and when it's when they're two separate ones, it's in narrow mode. But that is the only thing that switch does, as far as I can tell. So when you flick that switch, the only thing that it does is switch between those two the two capacitor setups, which are on the earthy end of the IF transformers. And looking at the diagram, I couldn't follow your description. So I think probably what we're going to have to do is to have a chat at some point when you're around. In fact, I was just having another look at it now to see. So it would be interesting. The only other, because that's the only thing that changes, and it works perfectly on the wide setting, i.e. when the two capacitors at the bottom, when the bottom of the IF transformers are coupled to the single decoupling capacitor, which is about I think 50 nanofarad, and it drops almost to zero, as far as I can see, when you switch it to the other single capacitor, and that's the only thing that switch does. So I was sort of a bit mystified anyway. If you're around later, Keith, give a shout on here or on 60, and we can perhaps chat through it when you've got a bit of time. Anyway, I will try Paul's suggestion of just hard linking across those particular contacts to make sure it's not a switch contact problem, which of course it could be. Right, I think that's about it. So I think it's elixir time. In fact, not sure I think it is. I know it's elixir time. And I will go and do that, and then get on with some things for the day. But we'll be listening on 80, and then later on, on 60 at the same time. So with that, I'm not sure. I think Ian said he was going. I think Trevor was going, so I'm not sure there's anybody else left. So I'll put it on to Ian. If Ian doesn't pick it up, it's Trevor, and if Trevor doesn't pick it up, it's cheerio. F4VSC G3YJO.
Yes, okay, Martin. Well, I had sound, but I decided to come back, and just to say thanks for the information on the fuse. And I'll try to protect the transformer, but I guess it is a bit on the main side. So I've replaced it with a 13 amp one. 7-3 guys, from F4VSC and over to PA3, Bill 8.
Yeah, okay there, Ian. Still holding up quite nicely, both you and Martin, and all the others are holding up quite nicely. Colin came up quite nicely as well towards the end. So, not a bad day. Let's hope it kind of stay like this for the weekend then, Ian. So it should be a big success, I think, if conditions are good. So I wish you all best MT3s, and talk to you tomorrow. PA3B8 signing off and clear with F4VSC and G3YJO and anybody else listening. Bye-bye all.
Yeah, cheers, Trevor. And just to say, Ian, if you are listening, The R107 currently on wide only actually does perform remarkably well. It's a very nice set to use. So yes, if you get a chance to play with one, I would do so. Okay, G3YGO now listening. Cheers all.
Yeah, cheers Martin. Yeah, we'll have another chat perhaps a bit later on, but I think if you're working from the same manual that I am, which is ZA3220, and the second sheet of the circuit diagram shows the bit that I was talking about. But the problem that I had anyway is not in the switching, anywhere near the switches. It's the actual capacitor that is tuning the IF coil. Anyway, we'll have a chat about it later. Mum must get me breakfast. G3HTW.
Yeah, cheers, Keith. I will give you a play around here again, and when you've got a moment, we can chat it through. And make sure we're using the same configuration. This is a 1941 diagram, and interestingly, the R107 actually has got an autograph of, I don't know whether it's the guy who built it or serviced it or just dusted it off. Actually, on the IF can, somebody essentially signed it, and then underneath it's 1943, so it's sort of quite interesting. Right, G3YGO, off to the Elixir.
Yeah, cheers for now.
G3YGO, G3MHX, you copy?
G3MHX, G3YGO, yes, copy you fine about strength 8, modulation sounding good this morning. Well, MHX. Sorry, no, clearly haven't had any Elixir. Sorry, Mike. Yes, it's come. Yeah, sounding fine, Mike. G3MHX.
G3YGO, G3MHX. Well, I could tell that Trevor, PA3BOH, that my uncle used to be the mayor of Beverley, where he was. His name was Daubney, WLM Daubney. He used to be the fighter pilot, a squadron leader in the war, in the Fleet Air Arm. Anyway, he won't mean much to you, Martin. I don't know whether PA3BOH is listening. Maybe not. Anyway, the guy on this 6X4, I don't suppose you found one, so I'll leave it there. Is it G3YGO, G3MHX.
Yeah, G3MHX, G3YGO. No, well, I was out and about yesterday, so I didn't have another look. I don't have any in my collection of valves, other than those that sit in my R107, which I'm using. But I will have a look around, and I'll check actually just see if I can see any coming up at a reasonable price as well. So don't worry, haven't forgotten it. But I have to say, Mike, this morning your modulation is as good as I've ever heard it. So whatever you're using and whatever you've got it set up to, please keep it, because it's a good strength, 7 to 8, and the modulation is really good. Okay, nice talk to you, Mike, and see you later. G3MHX, G3YGO, now QSY.
Cheers, Martin, G3YGO, G3MHX. Well, I've just got this transistor preamp with the flood transmitter, the gain control on the red transmitter, which is on a 6SL7 setup board, 2 triodes. It's set up a little higher than normal, so maybe that helps. It says I noticed that the meter is moving a little bit, which is good. It is upper modulation with this set. Anyway, thank you very much for the offer there, Martin. And I'll say cheers, beers. So G3YGO, G3MHX is clear.
Yeah, cheers, Mike. Well, keep it as it is. G3YGO now clear.
Isn't it? So, like we say, they don't know they're born.
Oh dear. Yes, Imbra, Alan and Dave. Yeah, 70. Catch you all tomorrow. And
yes, have another go a bit later on and see if I can copy you then. All the very, very best, Ron. G0GJE M0SBZ. 73s, bye-bye.
I will try and contact you later on.
G0GSR, Mike 0 Sierra Bravo Zulu listening.
Good morning, Dave. G0GSR. Yes, I was just about copying Ron, but struggling there because he's not terribly strong. These old radios, you know, I mean, the 101ZD is not that old radio, but these people who keep these good old-fashioned valve radios going, you know, one day, you know, they're just not going to be good enough, are they? I was listening to him there, he was drifting up the band while he was talking, and a little bit off frequency, but some of the older ones, you know, you've got to continuously follow people up the band. I just wonder how long they're going to keep these radios going for. M0SBZ to G0GSR.
Yeah, morning, Frank. G0GSR, M0SBZ returning. Beautiful signal, direct, Frank. I don't know what you've done. Maybe it's the misty weather conducting all the the electromagnetic waves a little bit better. But great signal, direct. Yes, I must admit, it's a lot of these old radios. It's something about I suppose it's a bit like having old cars, isn't it? You know, people wax lyrical about old cars, whereas in point of fact they were bone shakers and they were always going wrong, always leaking oil, and always a lot of trouble. But people still love them, don't they? And I think maybe there's the sort of feeling about old radios is a little bit the same. I must admit that I quite enjoyed my 570 71, my 571 rather Alpha when I first got it. But then, of course, it was my first radio, so that's always a bit like your first love, isn't it? A bit like the first car. My first car was a Mini, and I look back on that with a lot of affection. Even though I've driven some very, very posh and expensive cars in my time with GM, I still look back on the old Bone Shaker Mini as probably the best car I ever had. But of course, it was probably the worst, Frank. G0GSR M0SBZ.
MW0GYV.
Yeah, good morning to Peter. MW0GYV, and now the group G0GSR. I suppose it's all relative to what you're used to, isn't it? These old radios, I remember seeing there was a YouTube clip available somewhere that quite funny. It was showing a news item. There was some disaster in the USA, and it was showing how good the hams were at communicating during the disaster. And it was a big news item, one of the cable channels, and it showed a couple of these amateurs operating the very, very latest Collins equipment. And it was all, they had the full lineup, separate receive transmitter and the control panel and everything. But it took them 2 operators to keep it going. There was one who was actually doing the talking, and the other one was constantly retuning the receiver to keep the other guy in tune. Hey, good morning to Peter. I wonder how you are. I'm W0GYV in the group from G0GSR.
Yeah, good morning, Dave. Good morning, Frank, from a very dark and dismal South Wales. I don't know what the weather is like with you, but it's horrid over here. And, I often wonder when I hear people like you just mentioned. So I'm talking on my old 1995 radio. M0SBZ, MW0GYV.
Yeah, Roger. Yeah, got you, Wolfie. Very good morning, Peter. MW0GYV, M0SBZ returning to the group. Let me put it straight round to Wolfie. And Wolfie, can you pass it to Frank? Excuse me, and then Frank to Peter, Peter to me. So where are we? G3SSX, G4SSX, M0SBZ in the group.
Blimey, you're making me old then. M0SBZ, G4SSX, returning here. Very good morning, gentlemen. I hope all is well with you. All okay? Yeah, it's quite warm though. There's a bit of wind. It's overcast. It has been raining, but it's not raining at the moment, so hopefully it has stopped, because I'm trying to swing the bat this morning with the boys on a Thursday. There's always about 10 or 12 people, so we're having a game between us. Anyway, that's the story. Apart from that, nothing to report. The ex-condition's not very good. I worked at Dennis HP9, and I worked at David SM7 JKD, so there you are. That was my thing this morning. Still fiddling about with this radio. Absolute super radio. Haha, talking about the first radio. Heathkit Sugar Baker 102, and that was, I didn't do a lot of SSB on that. I've done a lot of RTTY on that. Anyway, that's the story. Morning to you, David, and of course Peter, and of course Frank. Anyway, put it back to Frank. G0GSR, G4SSX in the group.
Well, Wolfie, you're not using the FP200 at the moment, are you? What have you done? Because you actually sound like a human being. You've got bass on the signal, you've got the right amount of treble. It's sounding really good, Wolfie. What on earth have you done?
God knows. A mate of mine, Peter, he had an MP, a 1000 MP, and he told me to adjust. He gave me a couple of settings which I have implemented. I mean, it's a long word, and the audio sounds okay. So there you are. No, I'm not running the linear. No, I set the SB102. It was an old transceiver using Olvalf, of course. Absolute excellent radio. I wish I had it again. I like the Heathkit. They're nice radios anyway, and you can get all the spare parts you want, and a lot of help on the web as well. G0GSR, G4SSX in the group.
Yeah, okay, Wolfie. Well, you've obviously done some good there. You've got rid of that horrible thin DX audio. It sounds very, very good. So you've obviously found the right setting there, and it just goes to prove that the 1000 MP can actually sound good instead of sounding like a robot. I think all the other ones I've heard have sounded very, very thin. I don't remember that particular radio. The first valve HF radio I came across was the FT200, and I suppose that was pretty horrible and it drifted. But at the time, it was absolutely amazing. So it's all compared with your expectations, isn't it? But that one certainly sounds an awful lot nicer. So I'm sure the other people will agree with Wolfie. Over to Peter, M0GYV in the group, G0GSR.
Yeah, I was about to compliment Wolfie on its nicer audio. Although you are a bit close to the mic, you're puffing away a bit. But otherwise, yeah, much better. And I was able to open up the filters, and I could hear your full range there. And what can I say? Well done. That's super. So, with that, back to Dave, M0SPZ.
Yeah, Roger. GMW0GYB in the group, M0SPZ returning. Yeah, it certainly is, Wolfie. It's absolutely, it's chalk and cheese in comparison with what you were sounding like before. Sounds very, very nice. Nice to listen to, and easy on the ears. And congratulations, it's now sounding wonderful. Make a note, Wolfie, of where all the buttons are. That's something when I was playing around with audio I used to do religiously. Whenever I made a change, in fact I drew out all the positions of all the knobs and buttons and things on a bit of paper, because I was absolutely paranoid that I would make some changes and then forget where all the buttons were. But of course, since then, I no longer use that equipment. I just use one processor, and now that that's set up to the way that I like it, I don't ever touch it. So I don't need to remember where all the settings are. Whereas, in point of fact, it actually remembers where all the settings are for me, so it's got memories. But when I was using the old Behringer equipment, I actually drew out the positions of all the knobs and buttons and things, because I was quite paranoid about forgetting where they were all set. Right, okay. Well, yes, Frank, as regards to the Collins equipment, requires two men to use it. You know, when I was in America, there was a place, you know, what was it? Farrell's it was called. Farrell's Ice Cream Parlour. And this place was a place where you would go for a party and have an ice cream. You know, if it was your birthday, somebody would take you to Farrell's and order the. They had several ridiculous meals. One was called the King's breakfast or something, and that was about 6 different flavours of ice cream on a huge great plate. And there was something called the Pig's Trough, which was 1 scoop of every ice cream they made, and they guaranteed that if one person ate the whole thing, they wouldn't be charged for it. It was ridiculous, absolutely humongous. And when you ordered this thing, all the lights in the shop would flash and a siren would go off, and then 2 men would carry it on a stretcher. They would run round the shop with this thing, with all the lights flashing and the sirens going, and they would carry it in on a stretcher and put it in. I mean, it was absolutely huge. It was like a washing up bowl full of ice cream. Of course, nobody ever ate it all, but of course, everybody who was at the table had a scoop out of it, and and when on the menu it said Farrell's Pig's Trough. It's a 1 scoop of everything we make, and it takes 2 strong men to carry it, which is what came to mind when you said takes 2 men to operate it. So if you want to kill yourself really easily, go to Flint, Michigan, and order a Pig's Trough at Farrell's Ice Cream Parlour. Right, round to you, Wolfie. G3 SSX M0SPZ in the group.
You're making me old again. The number 4. Anyway, M0SPZ G4SSX return. Yes, I remember when I went to the States to see my son in Denver. Oh, I tell you what though, I mean, the American breakfast has nothing, not a leg to stand on compared with the British English breakfast, I should say. That is absolutely excellent. The best one in the world, there's no better one. But steak, any different versions of steaks I was eating over there. Oh, it was excellent. Oh, I love it. And I showed my son when he came over the last time how to prepare and make a curry, a lamb curry, you know, and he's doing that over there now. So he's got all the, of course, all the gear to use it. And before I was doing it with the sauce, we mustn't use the sauce. You got to use the paste, and the paste is much better. And marinate it and leave it, cook it the day before, leave it overnight, and to ferment, so to say, and then you can eat it. Absolutely excellent. I finished my last bit yesterday. Ah, delicious it was. Of course, I ran out of rice, so I said, noodles will do. So I done it with pasta, and it tasted absolutely excellent. So there you are. Another version of a curry. A G0GSR, G4SSX in the group.
Well, I never heard of that before, Wolfie. Curry with pasta, that's the first one, isn't it? But yeah, it's always nicer the next day, isn't it? I sometimes watch that mindless TV program, Man vs. Food, where he goes around all these eating establishments in the States and accepts all these huge challenges which they're very fond of. I think he's had to give it up because of health problems now, which is not surprising, is it? Anyhow, I've got a little bit of a tale of woe, Dave, especially regarding the magnets which arrived yesterday, and they didn't fix my meter, unfortunately. Whatever's happening, it's just getting worse and worse. I've put the new magnets on. They are extremely strong, but the meter's still not working, and I had it all apart now as far as I can take it without destroying it. There's nothing that shouldn't be in there, and it still isn't working. so it doesn't look like I'm able to fix it for whatever reason. But it was quite funny yesterday. I was because I was so frustrated. When I get frustrated with something, I start playing with audio. I know you don't play with your audio, Dave, but if I'm having no success with something, I put the monitor on and the headphones on, and I start playing with my audio. And I thought, well, I'll just do recording through G4 FPH's receiver. And of course, I had ended up having two contacts. The second one was with Peter again. And whilst I was talking to Peter, I was just idly playing with these magnets on the bench, just on my desk here. It's a wooden sort of office desk with drawers. And I noticed that every time I put this stack of magnets on the bench, it moved once I let go of it. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. There must be something in the drawer underneath. But I pulled the drawer out, and it was just full of papers. There was nothing in it. So I tried moving it around the bench, and it still did the same thing, like it had a mind of its own. And then I suddenly realised, it's a compass. Even though, with the lots of friction, etc., just putting it on the bench, it's still aligning with north-south, and it flipping was. MW0GYV with the group from G0GSR.
I don't know, your dangly bits there. Well, I'm looking at my nice sine waves at the moment, and there's no spikes on them, and there's no flat topping. And I used it to set up the antenna this morning, the tuner this morning, so I can see where my maximum output is. I'm picking it up just straight off the feeders there, Dave, the input to oscilloscope. Anyway, I think my most memorable, one of the most memorable meals I had in Chicago, as you talked about the US, was this cafe you went into where they insulted you. I think it was called something like Dick's Last Resort or something. But you went in there, as you walked in, I was warned beforehand by my colleagues, but when you walked in, the first thing they say is, "What do you want?" And it goes on from there, No, you don't want to sit there. That's a rubbish table. We'll sit you in this corner. It's even worse. I suppose you want a menu now. I'll see if I can find one for you. And they throw it at you, and then they just go on and on. What do you want to order that for? You're not going to eat all that, etc., etc., etc. And it's a hoot. I think it was called Dick's Last Resort or something like that. It was somewhere toward the centre of Chicago. But there we go. Happy days. We actually ended up there on a very snowy day. We come from a steel plant, and we'd spent about 5 hours doing 50 miles through the snow, following the snowplow. And when we left to go down there, it wasn't snowing. And by the time we got back, it was about 3 feet deep. It was amazing how much of snow that comes down over there. M0SBZ, MW0GYV.
Yeah, Roger, MW0GYV in the group, M0SBZ returning. Yes, okay, on the magnets. Well, sad story, Frank. It's, of course, it may mean that it wasn't necessarily just the loss of flux. It may be a combination of problems, Frank, but I guess eventually you'll reach the stage where the dustbin lid will come up, and that'll be the last you see of it. But those magnets, you can do stuff with these neodymium magnets that was absolutely impossible to do before they came out, before rare earth magnets came out anyhow. And dropping, you can buy spheres, balls of neodymium magnets, and I got some of those for dropping down copper tubing to demonstrate Lenz's law. You drop an ordinary ball bearing of a certain size down a piece of copper pipe, and it drops straight through at the speed of gravity. You drop an equivalent size, a same size neodymium magnet sphere down a piece of copper pipe, and it takes ages to come down because of Lenz's law producing equal and opposite electrical fields which induce magnetism and slows it down. And that was a really interesting demo. And the other thing, from magnetic disk drives, I had some pieces of copper sheet and put two of the magnets from a disk drive from a computer together, and moving this copper sheet between the two magnets you could feel it was like suddenly hitting treacle. You know, you'd be out in air, and then you would move the sheets into the air gap, and it was just like it had hit a spot of treacle. It was absolutely amazing, and that was unheard of. Even sort of 15, 20 years ago, you would never have got magnets that strong. They are truly spectacular. Came up with all sorts of magnetic demonstrations when I was at the school using neodymium magnets. And okay about the company, yes, I've noticed that. You leave them on their side and they swing round. I thought it was a screw in the desktop, you know, when I first saw that happen. But you're absolutely right. They eventually align themselves up with the Earth's magnetic field. Food in the USA, yes. Well, that restaurant you mentioned, Peter, that I went to a Chinese restaurant in Soho that did that many, many years ago now, and it was their trademark to be as rude as possible to the customers. They would always have a locked door, and when you knocked on the door, go in, they would say, "What do you want? What do you want?" We want to come in and buy something. Oh, all right then, sit over there. You know, and it was really very, very funny. But I suppose a lot of people now have copied it. The best one I heard was the Roadkill Cafe, somewhere on the old Route 66, the east-west track across America. There was a cafe called the Roadkill Cafe, and basically they had things like "from your grill to ours," and "you kill it, we cook it," all sorts of things, because lots and lots of animals are killed on the road, and basically if you hit a bird or something, you would pick it up and then stop at the Roadkill Cafe, and they would cook it for you, which is really quite gross, isn't it? Right, okay, so round to you then, Wolfie. G4 SSX M0SPZ.
M0SPZ, G4 SSX, returning here, very fine and all, chaps. Yeah, oh, I love the food, I love the steaks, you know. Oh, I love steaks, that's simple. Well, anything, even venison I love as well. I'll make this my final, chaps, if you don't mind, because someone wants to go for a walk, and I want to go to play golf, so there you are. I need a bit of practice as well. I haven't played since Saturday, so there you are. With that, I wish everybody a very good morning. Thank you for letting me join the QSO, and God willing, I'll catch you all tomorrow. I'm playing golf tomorrow as well. My mate just rang me up, so there you are. So I've been invited. Good, love it. Try and take some money off him if I can, which I doubt, but you know, I'll give it a good try. Back to you there, Frank. G0GSR, G4 SSX, signing, wishing all stations a very good morning. 7-3 all.
Yeah, okay, Wolfie, I hope you have a good game then. And as Peter said about the audio, there's just a little bit of wind noise with the microphone, so perhaps you could just help that by talking to the side or something, but much improved. Cheers for now, Wolfie, anyway. I'll pass it around pretty quickly as you're going. So over to Peter on G0GSR.
Yeah, have a nice game of golf, Wolfie. Hopefully you got pink balls or fluorescent balls so you can find them. It's very dull over here, and yeah, not a nice day. Back today to say cheerio. 73.
Yeah, cheerio, Wolfie, all the best, and I'm sure you're going to have an excellent game. Ha ha. Cheers, Wolfie, bye-bye.
And I think he's gone. This is G0GSR. Sorry, Peter?
I couldn't hear him.
Yeah, I guess he's gone. I'll just have a little over, then I'll pass it over to you if you don't mind. Yeah, Roadkill Cafe. Oh, it's just making me feel a bit sick, actually. Don't want to talk about that. Yeah, magnet. What you said, Dave, dangerously magnetic. I know exactly what you mean now. It was quite funny when I first got them. They're 10 mil diameter and 3 mil thick. So they came in a block of 10. And I got them separated, you know, reasonably easily. But just put them down on the bench, but they immediately flew off. You can't sort of leave them anywhere. They would leap up in the air and stick to anything that was nearby. And like you, I thought there was something metal in this desk. And then I thought, well, which direction is north? So I thought, I know, I'll make this stack of 10 magnets into a compass needle. So I went downstairs and I got a piece of cotton, separated them into 2 halves of 5 each, and I snapped them together with this cotton in the middle, and it cut the cotton. The force by which they stuck together actually broke the cotton. There was a little piece of cotton still stuck between them. So I tried it again, and it did exactly the same thing again. These things come together with such a tremendous force that they just cut through the little piece of cotton. Up to you, Peter. MW0GYV from G0GSR.
Well, I reckon you have to be really careful, where you leave these things. I mean, if a child was to swallow one, and then swallow another one, they can actually, kill themselves. They can, clamp their bits together inside. Same with pets, by the way, so be aware of it. I mean, you would think that a pet would have more sense than to swallow a metal bit. But, anything shiny, I don't know. I think Alexander's kitten might be interested in them because it's shiny and different. I think I'll unpack it with its paw. But there we go. Anyway, all our trees are in danger now. I'm a chainsaw kid. I've got my chainsaw working, and I'm busily reading about how to sharpen the blade now. So it doesn't look like it's ever been sharpened. I was given a sharpening kit with it, but it's got the wrong size file. It's supposed to be, I've checked it, it's supposed to be a 4mm diameter file, and it's actually 5.32mm diameter. It's inches, of course. But I just happen to have a 4mm chainsaw file anyway for my other one, so I'm trying to find out how to sharpen the thing up. I know it works, and it's quite aggressive. The trees aren't safe around here anymore. Anyway, it's no good you going to the States, Frank. You've got to be a meat eater. Vegetarians are sissies as far as they're concerned. You'd be okay for the cheese. That's spelled C-H-E-E-Z. Sorry, I should say that again. C-H-E-E-Z. And freedom fries. But because everything else is blooming, red and drippy. So I've been to some quite nice restaurants. I've eaten very well in America, but you can also eat pretty rubbishy food. But there we go. I noticed on the way home the other day, we stopped at the services. We went into McDonald's, had a cup of tea. It's always a nice cup of tea at McDonald's. But all the truckers were coming in as well. And there wasn't one of them that wasn't severely obese. I mean, when I say obese, I mean, there was more belly than anything else. There was one chap, he was as bald as a coot, he had a big head, and he went down to his shoulders, which were pretty flabby. He sat down, and he sort of rested his plate with his McDonald's burgers on his belly. I don't know. And the amount of stuff they were eating, it's just incredible. So I suppose sitting in a truck all day and eating burgers doesn't do you much good. M0SBZMW0GYV.
Yeah, Roger, MW0GYV with G0GSR. M0SBZ returning. Well, you could have been describing me there, Pete. Not quite that bad. But Elvis Presley, it's funny, it's a disease, isn't it? I think it's a disease because Elvis Presley, and if you look at a lot of pop stars, some of them don't seem to get fat enough at all. They just stay the same. I mean, Mick Jagger's nothing but skin and bone, and also his sidekick Keith Jagger and so on, and Paul McCartney. All these, and Ringo Starr looks like a living skeleton, but he actually looks younger than his son. So obviously, some people are affected by it, and some people aren't. And and yet you look at other pop stars and. Who was I was reading? Oh, Marlon Brando, evidently, was, he did. I think he ate himself to death, didn't he? And so did Elvis Presley. So it's a disease. I think it's almost like alcoholism. I think you can become addicted to it. As regards to the magnets again, Frank, well, yes, dangerously strong magnets. And the other thing that you need to be very, very careful of is if they do fly together, if you've got a couple of these magnets and you let them go and they fly together, they're very, very brittle and they can shatter as they snap together. and if they do shatter, the bits of magnet can come flying off at tremendous speed, and a lot of people have got chips of magnets in their eye and stuff, and then of course it's horrendous to get the magnet chip out of the eye, because the people at the hospital don't know, basically they're tiny little magnet with very, very sharp edges, and they don't know which end is which, and they have to go in with special tools to get the thing out, because if you put a piece of ferrous material, an ordinary pair of tweezers near it, it pulls it towards it, and it can pull it further through the tissue, so it's horrendous. So please be very, very careful putting them together. And I have had accidents with them where the things have flown together, from quite a distance, and they can shatter. So I've got mine in I think it's called a lock box, a bit like a Tupperware box, but it's got handles on the side that actually snap lock, like they're called snap lock. And so I've got a big box with all the different magnets in it, each type in a little plastic container inside this snap lock box with a big warning sign on the outside. Right, well, just finishing off about the food in the States, I think I told Frank this story, but I'll tell it again because I don't think I told you, Peter. When I was in Dayton, Ohio, I used to eat regularly, actually, about 2 or 3 times a week, because it was as cheap to eat out as it was to stay in and cook food. And I used to eat at a place called Jed's Steakhouse, and I always used to have similar sort of stuff whenever I went in. And but the rigmarole, they followed a script, and the script was you go in, and immediately a glass of a jug of water, ice water would appear, and she would say, "I'll be with you in a moment, sir." Then she'd go and get a menu. She'd come back with a menu, and then she would go away and say, "Are you ready to order?" You would say yes, and then she would say, "What would you like today?" And you would say, "I would like a steak, a T-bone steak," and she would then say, "How would you like that cooked, sir?" And then you say, medium rare, and then she would say, "Would you like baked potatoes or French fried potatoes?" And you would answer that, and then she would say, "Would you like this with it, this, that, and the other?" Anyhow, this rigmarole was exactly the same. Every time I went in, she would ask me exactly the same questions in exactly the same order. And after about 3 or 4 weeks of this, I went in one day, and the water appeared, and I said, before she even handed me the menu, I said, "I'd like a medium rare T-bone steak with French fried potatoes and blah, 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 blah." And she said, got her all flustered, and she said, "Oh, how would you like your French fries cooked, sir?" Oh dear, it might have been the English accent as well, but I thoroughly threw her off the script that she was meant to say. Right, so back to you then, Frank. G0GSR in the group, M0SPZ.
Yeah, good morning, John. G3BZF has joined us. That was cruel, Dave. Go on, admit it. It was deliberate just to confuse the poor woman's brain, wasn't it? You must have known she only had a simple programming language. But yeah, we actually did eat meat when we were in the States, and we had a fair bit of it, of course. And I've been going off meat for some years now, and it's only when we went overseas you could get a decent piece of meat. The meat you would get in this country was just very disappointing. That was one of the reasons why we stopped eating it. The Argentinian beef seemed to be okay at the time, but I don't know what the stuff you get over here was. They mess around with it too much over here. But yeah, the magnets, Dave, yes, I will be very careful with them. That's all noted. I did have 1 or 2 slight accidents when I first got them, as I said. As soon as I separated them into the 2 stacks of magnets, they immediately tried to get back together again with quite a snap, I must admit. But I shall watch that. I was a little bit concerned as well after I ordered them, because you can just imagine sending a packet through the post with a strong magnet in it. You could imagine it getting stuck inside the machines, couldn't you, the sorting offices? And over to John, G3BZF for the group from G0GSR.
G0GSR in the group, this is G3BZF returning to you. Yes, good morning, chaps. Not a very good morning here. Quite a thick mist this morning. it really does look autumnal outside. Can't see the bottom of the garden, so it's reasonably thick. But you all sound comfortably ensconced, as I am here in a centrally heated house. Thank goodness for modern luxuries. I've been very amused listening to this conversation. Yes, American restaurants are not a happy hunting ground for vegetarians, are they? Everything is red and tooth and claw there. And your ice cream thing, Dave, I've seen the same thing for steak, a 72-ounce steak. You eat it, you don't pay for it. But if you don't, you have to pay for it. And I've seen people attempt this. I thought it looked very, very unattractive because the thing's almost the size of a telephone directory, so it's completely raw inside, or it's burnt on the outside. But it's the land of plenty, isn't it? And nothing like beef over there, is there? One perhaps shouldn't think what's been done to it to make it taste so pleasurably. But I remember having corned beef out there for the first time and expecting something to turn up in a tin can with a little key welded on top, but of course nothing of the sort. Two nations separated by a common language. I've been having fireworks early here. You mentioned a chainsaw earlier, Peter. I was out with my electric chainsaw yesterday, and all of a sudden there's one hell of a flash and a bang came from the chainsaw, and the motor protection capacitor decided to give up the ghost. I don't know whether that meant a pulse came along the mains or what, but gosh, what a flash and a bang, and what a stink as well. Quite a difficult one to replace as well, so I don't suppose these things do any harm working without that capacitor. They presumably pump a little bit more EMI back into the mains than they ought to, but I would think it can probably work without the capacitor. Be interested in any opinions you have on that. Using listening to your fun and games with magnets. Yes, in another QSO yesterday afternoon, someone had got from Royal Mail a list of prohibited items, and it's very, very detailed nowadays. And it talks about the types of magnet and the like that must not be sent in the post. So I would guess those particular ones are way on the wrong side of what the Royal Mail says you can post. But it's quite surprising what detail they go into. They used to just ban batteries, but now they talk about specific types of batteries, and they used to ban what they just called filth. And now they go into detail of what sort of excrement can and what sort of excrement can't be sent through the post. Rather an odd circumstance. Let me put it back to the man with the top hat on. Oh, I see. Any questions? Or question time is coming from Dunstable, I think, tonight, Dave. So I wonder if you will be amongst the burgers attending Mr. Dimbleby and whatever, M0SBZ G3VZF.
Yeah, Roger, well, let's pass it to, a very good morning to you, John. Let's pass it to Peter. Peter, you pass it to me. Go ahead.
Okay, I thought it was my turn. Yes, good morning, John. And first of all, 72-ounce steak's an odd size. I've just been trying to work out what it is in pounds and ounces. I've eaten a 48-ounce steak in Morton Steakhouse. It was a similar deal, but we paid for it anyway. But that was a huge chunk of meat, 48, that's £3, isn't it? Huge piece of steak, and you wouldn't want to eat that every day. It came out, it's like a joint for a family of 12, it seemed at the time. But I also had cauliflower cheese with it, and this is the sort of place where they don't mess about. They don't separate the cauliflower into florets. I had the whole cauliflower as well, and 2 bottles of wine, and it took me hours to eat it. And we just come back from the baseball, and over there with my mates, and we sent it back several times. We needed the wine just to flush down this flipping great lump of cow. But it was I can remember it to the day. Morton Steakhouse, can recommend that. Capacitors, yes. Well, first of all, you're only going to upset the local amateur radio guys, so I wouldn't worry about that. And of course, you don't comply with the EMI regulations if you don't have it on. I think, does it, if it's directly across the motor, won't it suppress some of the sparking and arcing on the commutator? I guess it's that sort of motor with brushes. But it bore me in when you told us what was going on, what happened. It reminded me of when we were very poor and living in Newcastle on time. And our twin tub was full. It was a second-hand twin tub, and the spin dryer wouldn't work. And of course, what it was the starter capacitor that was faulty. Well, it was pre-internet days, pre-eBay and stuff. So, and it was a long way to the local shops, and we hadn't got any money anyway. So I looked at this capacitor, and I thought, well, if I put in one of my capacitors I got in my junk box, that'll start it. So I put one in, and it was a paper capacitor, about the right sort of capacity, and yeah, sure enough, the motor sort of started. But I was a bit worried about the thing being always in circuit. So what I did, I got it at RS push to make switch. One of the little round ones with got a black top on it. I see it now with a grey body. It's about 1 inch long, but about 1/4 inch diameter. And I installed that in the top of the spin drive, the case. And so the thing was, you put the close in the spin drive, all wet of course, sloshing the water everywhere, and then close the lid. And to start the spin dryer, you just press the button once and let go. Well, you can imagine that. Eventually, my wife was getting a tingly sensation in the little utility room. That's a posh word for the shack at the back of the garage. And then one day, she pressed it and she got a tingly sensation. But worst of all, there was an almighty bang, and the whole of this sort of 8-foot square room was covered in bits of silver paper and paper. And I had a very angry wife. M0SVZ, MW0GYB.
Yeah, Roger, MW0GYB. With G0GSR and G3VZF, M0SVZ returning. Well, first of all, on the spin, we used to make spin dryer motors. Frigidaire used to make the spin dryers in Hendon, and we used to make the motors for them. And those motors were, I think they called them series wound. And basically, they would just get faster and faster and faster if you didn't put a load on them. And it always amazed me how the flipping thing's self-centered. You know, these little spin dryers. There wasn't really a bearing at the top. It just sort of, you balanced out the washing, and eventually it sort of self-centered itself. Always amazed me how that worked. Of course, if it didn't, 9 times out of 10 it would. If it didn't, you had to. It started dancing around the kitchen, and you had to stop it and redistribute the washing inside. But they went ever so fast, and they did a pretty good job at getting rid of most of the moisture. A lot better, actually, I think, than a lot of these side-loaded washing machines that also. Do everything. They wash and spin dry as well. But I don't think they could match the discrete spin dryers in terms of speed. But they weren't very big. You couldn't get a lot of washing in them. Right, as regards to banned in the post, yes, I often wondered when I ordered all my stuff whether these things were legally. Although they do send them on a regular basis. If you go on eBay. Some of the companies are in this country, and they seem to be able to send stuff through the post. Of course, they do send them in packages that are quite big in terms of the magnet size, or the ones that I've had. So they try and keep the distance by the packaging, as it were, the bubble packaging, increase the distance between the actual package and any external metal thing. But when rare earth magnets first came out, the first ones were samarium cobalt, and I had some of these ordered specially, very, very expensive. And the laboratory supervisor at the time, who I didn't like much, wanted to borrow them to see if he could slow down his electricity meter. Anyhow, and he got stuck to his car. He put the magnets in his pocket, and they immediately stuck to his keys. And when he got to his car, he went to get the keys and the magnets out of his pocket, and the magnets clanged to the side of the car, sort of trapping his pocket and his trouser pocket, to the side of the car. And he said he had a devil of a job to try and get the magnets off of the car to get his keys out without having to take his trousers off, which I thought was very, very funny. As regards to question time, I didn't know that. I might even record it, John, to see if I know anybody asking the questions. I bet I don't. I mean, at one time, Dunstable was so small that you used to know just about everybody. Or, you know, if you were in a group of 5 people and somebody walked along the street, it was almost certain that one of the 5 people you were with would know who it was. But of course, those days have long gone, and it's not like that anymore. So I don't know whether I shall know any of the people on Question Time, but I will record it and have a look. I'm not really interested in those sort of things. For some reason, the questions seem to be either the actual people seem to be far more political than I think is normal for people. I wouldn't have thought that you had got so many sort of fanatics, left fanatics or right fanatics. There doesn't seem to be anybody in those Question Time programs that takes the middle way, as Buddha would say. You're either very far left or very far right, and I don't find that in my normal experiences with people. Anyhow, I waffle on. So back to you, Frank. G0GSR in the group M0SPZ.
Okay, G0GSR. I suppose it's only the people with very strong views either way which get attracted to being on such a program in the first place. You're right, probably wouldn't be interested. But regarding going along to watch it, I think you'll find it's been recorded in advance. Probably all the questions are arranged and vetted beforehand, and you answer them in strict order. It'll all be scripted, I would think. But I'm not interested in any answers that politicians give to prepared questions, because they just do it very, very well, don't they? They don't answer any questions at all. But regarding John's chainsaw, I've got a little electric chainsaw as well. Only mine hasn't blown up yet. But you probably find that capacitor will stop the commutator arcing quite as bad if you replace it. You may also find that it's a combined transient suppressor with a capacitor and 100 ohm resistor in series. That they're normally 0.1 with 100 ohm in series. Sometimes it's written on the package, the symbol of a capacitor with a resistor. So you may find it's actually one of those, but I think it's probably well worth repairing for the cost of such a thing anyway. Assuming you get into it. G3VZF for the group from G0GSR.
G0GSR on the group, G3VZF. Well, thank you all for your comments. Yes, it's a 0.1 microfarad, this Class X1. I don't think it's got any resistance in series. The markings are still fairly clear on the thing, and although I can't trace its manufacturer, a bit has disappeared off the case. It's